Thank you for joining us today on the Moms Who Know podcast, the podcast for moms who know that when you take care of yourself, you can take better care of everyone else. Today we are talking about creating memories as a mom. I love this topic because it's something we want to do. It's who we want to be. I feel like this conversation gives us a vision because I know for me, I want to be the fun mom. I want to have these great memories with my kids and these fun experiences for them to look back on. And sometimes for me, I get busy with making dinner and creating a podcast and cleaning up the house, and I forget about doing some of the things that are really going to matter in 10, 20 years when the kids are looking back and remembering. And so I hope that this conversation will inspire you to be a memory-making mom. That is what we're talking about today. And let me know. Stay tuned at the end for our question of the week so you can discuss and let us know what your thoughts are on being a memory-making mom. Hello and welcome to the Moms Who Know podcast. I'm your host, Chanel Nielsen, and my guest today is Jessica Smartt. Jessica, I'm so glad to have you. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, I feel super privileged that I was able to read your book before it came out, and I loved just learning about it. We're going to talk about your brand new book, Memory Making Mom, and it's all about building traditions in the home. So we'll get into that. But first, just a quick intro. Jessica's a former English teacher turned homeschooling mom of 3. And she is a blogger. She's blogged ever since her first baby was born, and they live in North Carolina. So we're going to talk today about family traditions. And Jessica has so many good things to add on this subject. So I'm excited to dive right in. I'd love to hear, to start off with, why traditions? I mean, as a mom, as a blogger, there are so many directions you could have gone. Why did traditions speak to you?
Well, what a great question. I talk in the beginning of the book about an experience that we had with my son, who has serious food allergies. And so we had one of those scary days that you try and pray and hope to avoid, where he had ingested one of his allergens. And it was just a really scary day for obvious reasons. And I remember that particular day. And well, honestly, I was kind of in a season already of just sensing like, I really need to prioritize what's important. I think as moms, we really do have a good mom gut. And, maybe I would even say, that little nudge inside that we get from, from the Lord or whatever. But I had kind of been thinking, I'm not sure that we're really investing our time in what matters. And this day that was super scary with my son was just kind of like a wake up call of like, okay, this is it. Like, at the time he was 6 and you're thinking, I've got best case scenario, we've got 12 years left and this 6 years has gone in a blink. And are we really spending our time, on the things that mattered, and just really feeling, frustrated with myself that I would get distracted. Our moms didn't have to deal with all of the technology issues. And in some ways, like, yes, it's amazing to have Google Maps. How did they ever do anything before that? But, the downside is it can be really distracting. And so just feeling all of those things that moms feel. And I guess, honestly, I think it was through my sister. My sister and brother-in-law are really intentional, and one of those families that always have some special thing to do for every holiday. It's like every other week is something special. And I always just kind of felt a little bit like, I wish I was more like that. And I guess that day, I mean, not exactly on that day, but, throughout that time period in that season, I just started thinking, you know what? There's not really any reason that I can't be one of those moms. It's not too late. My kids are still pretty little, and, I think our kids are way more adaptable to changes, and especially when it's something fun, like we're going to have a new tradition than we think. So we just kind of started doing them, and I did a lot of reading on it, just dug in, to books that were written a long time ago and some that were written today. And it just cemented in my mind that traditions are the missing link. They are what, the word sounds so archaic and old and not really that trendy, but they're exactly what we're longing for. If you look through your social media feed, it's just picture after picture of moms. What are the moments we want to share? It's those special days and those fun things and those we always blah, blah, blah. And, so, I'm going on here for quite a long diatribe, but we have these things that we value, and it's different for every family, but traditions are the way that it makes those values happen. So we choose what matters to us, and then traditions are the way that it actually means something because, we value family. Well, here's how we're going to celebrate it. We're always going to have a meal together this night, and we're going to celebrate by game night or whatever it is, and I go through all those just different topics in my book. But anyway, that's the very long answer.
That's a great answer. I think there is just so much in there. I think I love this is what stood out to me the most. There's no reason I can't be one of those moms. I think that was what I got when reading your book, because for us, my kids are, I have teenagers now. I have a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old. And as they've gotten older, they want to do more and more with friends, and I get more grief. When the kids were young, I was like, okay, let's go out and do this fun thing. And they would just go along with it. And as they've gotten older, it's like, no, mom, I don't want to do that, and I get these things back from them. But I like that you say there's no reason I can't be one of those moms to keep trying, to keep bringing these traditions, because what I found has happened for me is that because of that resistance from my kids, sometimes I've backed off. And lately, we've been in kind of a boring rut as a family and not doing as many fun traditions as I would like. And so as I read your book, it just kind of rekindled that in me, like, oh, yeah, I want to do these things again. I miss those things. And those are the things that matter to me and to my family. And so I think that, for all of us, there are things that we want to see happen in our family. And yet, for whatever reason, whether it's teenagers or laziness or money or just anything that keeps us from doing it, let's start off right there. There's no reason we can't be one of those moms that do fun things. There's nothing holding us back. So, if you were speaking to a mom, who is concerned that like, oh, I just can't do this. Just seems like one more thing and it's hard. What would you say to her?
Well, it is. I'm not going to lie. Some of them are a lot of work. Today, as you and I are recording this, it's the week of Valentine's Day, and today my mom threw a little Valentine's party for all of her little kids and all the little grandkids, and it was the cutest thing. But it did strike me as I was just watching it all unfold, like I just was reminded it's a lot of work sometimes. She had gotten all these crafts and decorated, and every tradition doesn't have to be full stop that whole thing, but I don't want to sugarcoat. Part A is I don't want to sugarcoat and say that it's not a use of energy, but it is so worth it. And the reason that it is because it answers and satisfies that core nagging that we all have of, am I spending our time intentionally? Am I investing in the things and people that matters? And so in a way, I feel like it's almost easier. Like, yes, it is work, but it's almost easier because, we don't want to look back and have regrets, and we don't want to miss out on these opportunities. So I think that it actually is a solution. I feel better having them in place. So I'll give you an example. One of our traditions is Saturday morning pancakes. And when we started making the traditions, or I just started kind of dabbling in it, I thought, well, I'd heard of people who did like a special Saturday breakfast. And I was like, I just don't know, weekends are busy, and when we do sports and blah, blah, blah. And, I just don't know if we can keep up with it. But we gave it a try, and I cannot even tell you, it makes life so much easier. And I don't even know how to exactly articulate it, but it's like we know it's going to happen. I mean, on a logistical level, I know what we're eating on Saturday morning. I know what our plan is. I know how we're going to start the weekend, how we're going to kick it off. And it gives us kind of this anchor in our week of like, this is always happening. And it is amazing how really we are consistent with it. If we have to get out the door, we just do it a little bit earlier. If one of us has to leave, we'll work around that or whatever. But it has made life actually easier, because the important question is, we want to spend time together. We want to have that quality time. We don't always do dinners together because my husband works late a lot, but it answers that, it satisfies that, it's a solution for that, and it's there. We don't have to every week reinvent the wheel and think, well, how can we spend time together and how can we have a quality? Well, it's there. There's our tradition. So I don't know if that makes sense, but when you plan ahead of time, it's like it alleviates some of the in the moment angst and pressure of, fitting all the things in.
Totally, it makes sense. I feel like that is, if we can set these things, it's one of those, it gets it off our mind. It takes the confusion out, and we don't have to wonder what's going to happen. We don't have to redecide.
Exactly.
It's just decided. And I'll say our Saturday morning tradition is awesome. It's dad breakfast, and my husband does the breakfast.
That is awesome.
It's the best. I highly recommend that one.
That is. Yeah, you pulled off a good one there.
Yes. Yeah, that's been a fun one. And he usually does something great like pancakes or something different than what I'm doing on the weekends. I mean, the weekdays. And so the kids really enjoy that. So, okay, I love that thought that, even if it is a lot of work, it matters. And then that second thought that, having it set is going to make it a little bit easier. I think those are both really valid points, and how, will help people to see how they can fit it into their life. Any other thoughts on making it work?
Yeah, I mean, it just has to be kind of a work in progress. I mean, one thing I'm really kind of, I don't think struggling sounds too harsh, but trying to figure out is, I know that game nights are like so epic, and people, when I, have started writing this book, I'll often ask people about traditions their family had, and inevitably in a group, somebody says family game night. And it's so funny because, for moms, I think it is a lot of work. There's always going to be those, there's the toddler who wants to tear the board apart, and there's somebody who doesn't like losing. And, it's like there's all these layers of stress, but it is something that people treasure. And so we are trying right now, we're in the process of trying to figure out, well, how can we make that routine? How can we make that part of our life? And I always think about, if you're going to implement a tradition, you can do it if it's something matters to you, you can do it on a daily basis. And so there's things that we do that are, rituals and traditions that we do on a daily basis, or you could make it a weekly thing, or you can make it a monthly thing, or you can make it a seasonally thing. And right now I'm kind of trying to think like, how could we do like a game night, a monthly game night? Because for some reason, I'm not sure that I have it in me yet to add another weekly. I know a lot of families do, but because our kids are little, but so that's one way of thinking of it, fitting it into one of those slots, I guess.
Yeah, I like that because it sort of takes some of the pressure off. It doesn't have to be, okay, for it to be a tradition, it must be done every night or it must be done every week. It's like, where can this fit in our family? And then you can kind of decide from there. One other thing that I'd add is to really, I think as moms, to make it work is we have to work with our talents and our temperaments. So like for me, decorating and getting all cutesy and that kind of thing, it's just not my thing. And so if I think of a tradition, or sometimes we see this on Pinterest or Instagram, these moms that go all out and make these things super cute. And when I see that, it just looks like stress to me and it doesn't look fun. And yet there's this guilt that comes up like, oh, their kids are probably having so much fun. She's such a fun mom and I'm not that fun of a mom. And yet I do other fun things. And so to recognize as a mom, like, where are my strengths? And this is what they are. And so the traditions need to be built around this. And I've also found that my daughter, who's 15, that is her thing. And so I can also
Mm.
delegate and be like, okay, can you decorate the table? And she'll do it. And so there are different ways to kind of make it work, but we have to make it work for us.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you said that. I think that's so wise. But and I would also say, I mean, I think that's an excellent rule of thumb, and I think I even maybe touched on that in the book. But I think another thing is every once in a while, um, it's fun to kind of try to be what is not our strength because I think the
Mm.
kids like get a kick out of it. And I think it was my cousin who gave me this advice. Like if you're the mom who's, real active and running around and always, maybe your kids would love to just do like a cozy story time. Maybe you have one that's just like one of those, real introspective cuddle and just everything be quiet. And so, I shared in the book, my own mom was she was just like a quieter, she is a more quiet or shy personality. But when we were real little, if we passed, cows on the road, she would pull the car over and like moo out at the cows, like super loud, this real legit sounding moo. And because it was so uncharacteristic, we just thought it was a hoot, So every
Yeah.
once in a while, you can throw that into.
Yes, I love that. That's so fun. I think that the combination of those two things, right? So don't feel
Yeah,
pressured to do it all the time, but if you can turn it on, like that's going to be super memorable and fun for everybody. And you might just learn a thing or two about yourself. And
exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
okay, I think that's awesome. Now, one of the things that stood out to me as I was reading your book, you talked about work in the family. And in a book about traditions, I was not expecting that. I was expecting, the fun, the seasonal, holiday, all these kind of things, but I wasn't expecting work. And when I got to that chapter, I was like, yes, I like work. Let's talk about work. And first of all, what made you decide to put that in? And how does work even fit in with this conversation of traditions?
Well, yeah. I mean, it just felt like without it, it would not, you're right. It's not the most fun thing to think about, right? Like it's not the glamorous Disney, all that. But it just felt like the picture would be incomplete without it. And, it's such an integral part of life and of raising children. Um, so I felt like, well, I have to talk about it. I mean, it's not going to be one that everybody's going to like book year necessarily, and the kids are going to jump up and down when you talk about your new traditions of cleaning out the van or whatever. But yeah, that was kind of my thinking that I think, especially today in the modern culture, um, it's a lot about entertaining our kids and keeping them busy with, camps and classes and clubs and sports and, all good things. But the bottom line is, that work ethic is going to really serve them well in life. And I think it's something that a lot of kids, really are just not great at now, my own included, so so yeah, we talk about work in the home on a daily basis and weekly and all that. And I think that it really has made a difference. And it also helps you appreciate the fun stuff more,
Yeah. Definitely. Well, you guys have a system. Tell us a little bit about the work system in your home.
So our system is called regaining order in the home. That's what my friend called it. And that is just basically what it does. So she laid out the chores, the good old chore system that, we sometimes just will forget to implement. And then another big flip to it, well, there was two things. There was you can earn chips to cash them in for treats, little rewards, whether it's like, money, you can cash them in for money or a date with mom or dad or like this fun activity, movies, even sleep over with friends or whatever it is. And you can earn those extra chips by adding extra chores. Or just like reading a book is a couple chips, or practicing piano is a couple chips. So that kind of adds a little bit of your kids are getting rewarded in a concrete way for the stuff that they're doing. So there's the stuff they like have to do around the house, and we just kind of reinstituted that, and then adding so that they can earn extra chips. And then there's also a consequence jar, which is for those, that you clearly lay out, here's our family rules. And then you can pull a consequence out of the consequence jar and tack it up when somebody needs it. But, it's just one of those things that if you are feeling the house is getting a little chaotic, and we all have those seasons, it just kind of presses the reset button. Like, okay, just as a recap, this is what our family thinks is important, and here's the rules in our home. And, we're all just going to get back on board here.
That's great. Now, what kind of consequences are in your consequence jar?
So my friend had them all. She's one of those really highly detailed people. And so there was certain categories of infractions, and the punishment meets what's the phrase? The punishment fits the crime.
Yeah.
So for example, if it was like an unkind relational infraction, okay, then you would, for one example, write a letter to someone apologizing, or do a chore for them. You see what I mean? So if it was like a disobedience infraction, there are like kind of, the typical, like you lose a privilege, or you write an apology note to mom and dad, or, those kinds of things. If it was like a leaving the things around the house kind of infraction, then it was a more minor, like you get an extra chore kind of a thing. So it was neat because I color coded the, when I'm describing it in the book, I said my husband looked at me like I was a three-headed alien from Neptune when I was describing the process, because he's like, "Wow, your brain is something else." But so they were color coded. So it was like, okay, if you misbehave, well, you got the impolite category, and those are purple, so you pull a purple out. So it sounds probably more complicated than it is, but it was just a simple way of like, you don't have to rethink of a consequence on the spot every time. You knew, like, okay, this was the kind of infraction, and this is a good punishment, and you kind of come up with all of the consequences ahead of time. So
yeah. Okay. I really like that. I think for so many of us, we want to reinforce you get positive behavior. We want to make sure that the negative behavior isn't happening, but it's hard to follow up on consequences. It's hard to think of consequences. And so I love this idea of having it all set out. Here's your chips. You did something good. Here's your, pull a consequence out of the jar. So I love that. I think that's an awesome, way to just really reinforce what you want to have happen in your family. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit here and talk about some of your family's best family traditions. So as you've pondered this, what are some things that really matter in your family?
Well, one thing that matters is our faith. For us, that's something that's important to my husband and I. We met doing a ministry to high school kids, and so it's kind of like foundational to our relationship. And so we implement traditions that include faith-oriented ones, whether it's church or, we say prayers with the kids or things like that. So that's one. Another big one is learning. We homeschool, and I want my kids, whether they were in school or not, to really be just to love reading and love being curious about stuff. And so I really try to cultivate just like, oh, look at that cardinal. Have you ever seen such a bright color? I've got younger kids. So when they're older, maybe it's watching movies and really like thinking and talking about what's in it. I don't know. Maybe you can give me some ideas, because I'm not there yet. But so learning is a big one that's important to us. And I would say service too really is like, again, I mentioned to you that, and this is like the good, bad, and the ugly here, a little inside story, but we made Valentine's this week for our cousins, and one of my kids was just not enjoying it, and he's like, well, I don't really feel like it. And I'm like, you will make Valentine's for your cousins, don't like kind of getting worked up. And then I reeled it in a little bit and just said, listen, I do a lot of things that I don't want to do. I actually don't want to make dinner every night, and you can see these blank looks of like, what? You don't love making dinner for us every night? But, so yeah, and I said, part of life is you do things for other people, even if you don't feel like it. And we talked about like, just imagine your little cousin's face when he gets his Valentine. And, you can do a really good job making one, or you can do a not so good job, but let's try to like make something that will make them really happy. And so throughout our seasons, I always just try to think of ways to be, outwardly focused. Because I think it's just so good for them to get out of, for all of us to get out of our own worlds. So, yeah,
Yeah.
those are some big ones.
Those are huge. Those are important for all of us. Now, those are kind of big ones for moms who are looking to start traditions. And as they've heard, everything that we've talked about, we started out the call talking about, when moms feel like, this is kind of hard. How do I make it work? I would love to hear your tips and your idea for like, what is one small thing? Where can people start?
Okay, that's great. I would say definitely think of a weekly food tradition. Um, you could do a Sunday night dinner. We talked about Saturday breakfast. You could do you like a snack dinner. We really enjoy doing a snack dinner, which is easy on mom and also special and fun. So I would pick number one is I would pick a food tradition. And again, I talk in my book about it can be going to get donuts on Saturday mornings together. Like you don't have to be in the kitchen slaving, but something that you're going to do together because food is just such a bonding agent. Like people just warm up and open up around food. So I think that would be huge to pick one food tradition. And then honestly, I think the next one that I would add, and it's not easy, we struggle with it, but I would pick something that's like one-on-one with each kid. And, do whether you call it like date with mom night, date with dad night, but I would implement in some way a regular way to spend one-on-one time with your kids. And I think that does things it is so worth the time that we invest in it. That's the one thing that our kids talk about so much. And we, like I said, we are not great at this. Like we're still, it's just hard, to make it happen. I know some families, I have friends who like once a week, one child, they have kind of like a standing night where somebody gets to go hang out with dad. Or they'll do like a child can stay up late, and just them and spend time with the parents on a weekly basis. But I would try to come up with some way to do, even if you just had like, okay, the 5th of the month, there's 5 people in a family, the 5th of the month is going to be a date night with, mom and one of the kids or dad and one of the kids, and then just rotate through like that. I just think there's a big dividend paid with that kind of time. So I would probably start with those two.
Those are a great place to start. I think really, first of all, the food one, we're all making dinner in some form or another anyway. And so that is a simple place to start. And then the second one is just so meaningful. I know I've seen big, things come out of spending one-on-one time with my kids. And when things get kind of crazy around here, when the kids are fighting a lot or just things are not the way I want them to be in the home, that is an answer. That's a solution that really brings the family together and builds the relationship as you work with each kid, work to spend time with each kid having fun. It strengthens that bond and it changes the atmosphere in the family. So I love that. If people want to find more, where can they get more from you?
Well, we've been talking a lot about the book. I would encourage them to check out the book. They can order it on memorymakingmom.com. So I would head them there.
Perfect. Well, I will link to that. And any final tips for us about building traditions?
I think that what I would say is, and we touched on it at the very beginning. Um, it's never too late to be a memory making mom. It's on the back of the book. And I just believe I find myself saying it over and over because I think we always do have those, oh, it's too bad that blah, 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 kind of like the story is already written, and it's not. That's not true. That's just a lie. And no matter where our kids are or what stage we're in, we can begin right now, today, to begin being more intentional in our families.
Yes, I agree. And I think, really wherever your kids are, even if they're out of the house already, I think for most of our listeners, most of them are in the stage with young kids at home. But if you are one who has kids out of the house, it's not too late. We can still build these relationships. We can still be this memory making mom. And I think that's what we all want to be. So Jessica, thank you for sharing this with us and giving us hope that we can do this.
Thanks. I've enjoyed chatting with you.
And thank you everyone for listening to Moms Who Know. I hope you enjoyed that conversation and it got you thinking about the memories that you have had with your kids and the memories that you want your kids to have of their growing up years with you. So our discussion question for this week is, what is a memory you've created with your kids? I'm excited to hear from you and to learn some of these and to see what really stands out to you, because we have a million things we could say to that, right? Like, we've all created so many memories with our kids, but what stands out to you? What is a memory, when I say that comes to mind? Please share. I would love to hear it. You can share that at Moms Who Know Podcast Facebook group or on Instagram at Moms Who Know Podcast. And you always have the option to share with a friend. We love that. Or to just think about this question and think about the memories that you are creating. I will see you next week on Moms Who Know.